Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
Hello, we're British Garden Centres, the largest garden centre group in the UK with 73 garden centres. From Highlegate Garden Centre in Northumberland to Havant Garden Centre in Portsmouth and Carmarthen Garden Centre in South Wales and everywhere in between. We are so excited to be the sponsor of Series 18 of the Plant-Based Podcast. We're also celebrating our 35th birthday this year as British Garden Centres was launched in 1990 in Woodthorpe, Lincolnshire, by two brothers Charles and Robert Stubbs. They started by selling hedge cuttings outside their family home and have now recently opened their 73rd garden centre in the Lake District. We aim to provide you with great plants and gardening products at affordable prices with a first-class service delivered by a passionate team. Follow us on our journey on social media at British Garden Centres and find us online at britishgardencentres.com, where you can also shop online and get 10% off with the code PLANTS10. Let's keep Britain growing. Code expires on the 30th of June and gives 10% off everything excluding clearance and gift cards.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. It's Ellen Mary here. This episode is a really special episode released just before the RHS Chelsea Flower Show, and I had the absolute honour of chatting with two design businesses who are designing show gardens at Chelsea, supported by Project Giving Back. First off, I chatted with Katie Terry, and Katie runs a design business called Good Grounding. I had an absolutely lovely chat with her. She's so wonderful, and it was just a lovely half an hour or so spent talking about the design of the garden and plants and how she got into gardening. Katie has designed a garden for the ADHD Foundation, so helping to break some barriers down to, realise that neurodiversity is the same as biodiversity, and you will hear us talking about that. And then after that chat, I also had a lovely discussion with Duncan Hall and Nick Burton from Burton Hall Garden Design. They've designed a show garden for the Down Syndrome Scotland charity. So their design is about breaking down barriers and stigma faced by people who have Down syndrome in society, at the same time as celebrating their many amazingly positive qualities. So this was a wonderful chat as well. It was just so lovely to hear how the garden came together. I'm really excited for all Katie, for Duncan and for Nick for the show this year. So if you're going to Chelsea, please go and check them out. Give them a follow on social media. So I'm going to let them tell you all about their gardens. It's a lovely episode, and I hope you enjoy it. Hello.
Hi, Ellen.
Oh, hi, Katie. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Oh, I'm delighted to be asked. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am sure you are so busy right now, so I genuinely appreciate it.
I'm literally in the car on my way home from the showground. So this is an early night. I think this is the earliest I've left in, this is day Wednesday, 5, I think. Yeah. I'm losing count.
Gosh, and you've got a few more days to go yet as well.
Yes, so we have press day on 19th, but we really need to be ready next Friday.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope it's going brilliantly for you, and looking forward to finding out more about the garden and what you do and everything. And I know you're driving back at the moment, so we'll crack on with it. So hopefully
Yes,
you
do.
can get home and get some sleep so you can be ready for tomorrow. So just to get started, Katie, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Have you always liked plants? Like, how did you get into garden design? So just give us all of the information.
Oh, I think specifically plants. I don't think it was specifically plants, but definitely outdoor space.
Yeah.
And for me, it was growing up with next to my grandparents, who had a big garden in that Munstead, which is that sort of Gertrude Jekyll area where Lutyens and Jekyll work together. So all these amazing gardens nearby, and being aware of, having exposure to all of that at an early age. And we had a big garden because we lived next door, and we shared the garden with my grandparents. He was a great gardener. And my big memory about that garden, I had two memories. One climbing the willow tree and trying to get to the very top branches and seeing the gardens, or over the wall at the end of the garden, and beyond, and a damson tree which we harvested every year and made, for my grandfather, damson gin. And he had a kitchen garden which was below my willow tree, so I could sit up there and watch him. And we also worked in the greenhouse together. But the other great thing about that garden was what was over the garden wall, or fence, which was prohibited to us by our grandparents and my mother. However, of course, if something's prohibited, you want to go and find out what's next door, because it was basically an abandoned garden. And inside that abandoned garden was a greenhouse, a Victorian greenhouse, which was pretty dilapidated, but it grew grapes and peaches and all these things. It was like a totally secret garden for me. So those are the sorts of memories that really have an impact on me as a child, if I look back.
Katie, that just sounds idyllic. Like, I'm sitting here, and as you were saying it, I was kind of had my eyes closed and I was imagining it in my mind, and it just sounds absolutely lovely to be able to, as a child, explore outside and climb trees and have that kind of connection with nature that's so natural that we have, perhaps before many of us grow up and lose that kind of link to it. But it just sounds so beautiful. And then I'm imagining this kind of dilapidated greenhouse with peaches and fruit. I mean, it sounds like something out of a book.
And I didn't realize then how hard it was to grow a peach in this country.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Then I had my other grandmother on my father's side. She lived within the bounds of a rhododendron and azalea nursery. So and she had the most amazing garden as well, with monkey puzzle trees growing in it. And in actual fact, she supplied Wisley with the monkey puzzle seed, because she had a male upwind of a female. And, I thought all these things were normal, but not really. But I was very lucky to have that exposure as a young age. And I think then when I went to sort of choose my career, I don't think we got the guidance in those days that we do today. People are quite astute about helping children find their way. And I wasn't academic, I was artistic, and, I bumbled along and ended up sort of going down the sort of art history route and in the rag trade a bit, and then jumped along into digital media and sort of just, I suppose, just surfed a wave, but with no great direction. And I think what was serendipitous for me was at the age of 28 being made redundant from a job that I had in Sydney. And that gave me the time and freedom and a little bit of money to actually sit down and have a navel gaze and think about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I read this amazing book called What Colour Is Your Parachute? And if you're ever at a loss, I think it's a great book for, finding your direction. And it just was so obvious to me after reading that and doing the little exercises. And it's like, take all the stuff that you don't like out of your life and do the stuff you do like. And it just became so obvious about what I wanted to do. I wanted to be outdoors, and I wanted to, essentially I wanted to draw. So I'm still a hand drawer. I design by hand. I have to outsource my CAD work. But I did try the Vectorworks. I did do the Vectorworks courses, and but for me, I was like, I had lost touch when I started to do it on the computer with the paper, and I had to put the pen back in my hand, basically. So while I was in Sydney, I discovered this realization that garden design was going to tick all the boxes for me. I kind of wish I'd known that 10 years before, but I wasn't too old to get started. Yeah. And so I signed up to West Sydney TAFE and did a diploma in garden design. And then,
sorry, Katie, it's so wonderful because if I could go back through all of the episodes of this podcast, I would say that at least 80% of our guests have some connection with, plants, nature, being outside, grandparents' influence, and then kind of lose their way for one reason or another, but come back to gardening or landscaping in some way. So whether that's design or whatever, it's almost like it's in your blood. It's like it returns home wherever you are. And at whatever age. And, that's kind of what you've just said. I know you had a big life change with obviously redundancy and then the discovery of this book, which I'm actually going to go and read now as well. But that's...
you don't need it, Ellen.
No, but I'd love to be... I am a bit of a bookworm, going completely off track here, but you did say that you contract out your CAD work. You like to put pen to paper. I'm a writer. I do copywriting almost all day. So for horticulture, nature, that kind of thing. And I really struggle to do it on even on a keyboard now. I love writing. I love putting pen to paper. There's something lovely about that. And even in the writing, I feel like it's a more artistic way of writing. So I completely get what you are saying when it comes to that as well. And it's really lovely to hear that you still hand draw.
And there is something different about the way your brain works when you actually create it rather than type it or mouse it or stylo it. Someone was explaining it to me the other day, and I wish I'd recorded what they said and memorized it, but there is a sort of physical difference. And it's really important. They did. I think it was something about children learning at school, and a lot of them being either on laptops or computers now, and how important it is for them to learn to write and have that connection with the paper and the pencil.
Yeah,
because it has a different effect in your brain.
Wow, that's really interesting. Makes sense, doesn't it, as well? So you went off to study garden design, and you now have your own garden design business. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was still in Sydney, and I started working with some garden design studios to get some experience. and I was really lucky. I worked with an amazing company called Spirit Level out in Sydney, out in Australia, who are still just going great guns. And then I realized it was a good idea to actually set up my own company, and also then potentially freelance, pick up my own jobs, work for other studios. So yeah, and the name of my company, because a lot of people are called, by their name, and so actually this is what's interesting at Chelsea at the moment, because a lot of people are calling me Katie Terry, but my company is Good Grounding. And when I was in Australia, I saw that a house builder was called Good Manners, and I thought it was brilliant. And my mother always used to say, "Oh, it's very important to have a good grounding." And I was like, yeah, classic. I've got, I've got to be Good Grounding. So registered it and all the rest of it. And so that was the birth of Good Grounding. I stayed in Australia for a bit longer. Unfortunately, my mother got ill, and I had to come home very quickly, and she died soon afterwards. She had pancreatic cancer. It was a bit of a shock to all of us, and I came home. So to help my brother sort things out, and obviously the great thing about being self-employed and doing the sort of work that I do, it comes wherever you go, it goes with you too. So set up over in the UK. I was based down in Brighton, and I met some, great people in Brighton, including people like Patrick Clark, Hussey Clark at the time, and landscaper who's now winning sort of construction awards, Your Land Design.
Wonderful.
And I set up there for a while. I was feeling pretty lost because I'd lost my mother, and I'd been in Australia for 5 years, and I just couldn't. There was no sort of home base, but I had a focus, and I got on with it. And then I met my future husband, who was Irish, and he was undergoing a postgraduate course, and he said, "Well, I want you to move to Dublin because I can't move to England." And I said, "Well, it's easy for me. I've just moved countries. Why not do it again?
Let's just do it again."
Yeah. So, and I was excited about, another area to work in. So I'd been in Brighton for a couple of years. I did a few jobs and, worked through my projects, and then moved to Dublin, and had 5 years in Dublin working and setting up Good Grounding there.
Wow.
So I also got some wonderful experience working in Dublin. I also freelanced out to a couple of designers. One was Paul Martin, who is a Chelsea award-winning garden designer, and a lady called Rachel Lamb. And I also did one of Jimmy Blake's earliest plantsman courses. I think just as he had started it, might have been the first or maybe the second year that he had it up and running. But that was just the most fantastic awareness for me about, because I'd come from the Southern Hemisphere, and it was just like, right, building up that knowledge and having the experience in a different area. And of course, Dublin's a great place to work because you've got the Gulf Stream, you've got a lot of sand and free draining. So you've got plants that survive, even though it's quite wet. But then Arthur and I got married, and I got pregnant, and we were going through the Celtic Tiger crash, which wasn't a great time to be there. So after 5 years, we decided to move for his work and have my 2 children. And although I'd set, good grounding just carried on back in the UK. We then, bought a house, renovated a house, and all the time sort of juggling children, house renovation, and being back in the UK. So I've been set up here now for 14 years now, I think. No, sorry, 2000, and he's much better at days.
A long time.
he's the one that remembers the anniversary. Yes, but quite a long time. I think 2000 and I'm
2000 and something.
something. But anyway, that was a bit of a slow patch for me. Obviously frustrating, but just because the kids were young, and I just could only do what I could do. Yeah. And it was setting up again. So the only downside to moving is that you've got to start again. You've got to build that reputation back up. And then I lost my father. So that was another thing to concentrate on.
Oh, gosh.
But we've got through it all now. And I suppose, in some ways, Chelsea has come at a really good time for me because, my girls are now older.
Yeah.
All these things, all these life-changing things have happened. And I can now really focus on my future projects and building my business.
Yeah, so hopefully this is an exciting time for you after all of that, moving forward, and taking your design business to a completely amazing level and showcasing what you can do. RHS Chelsea, I mean, that's an incredible opportunity, isn't it?
Well, when the letter came through from PGB, I just couldn't believe it. I yelped, and that was just getting through the initial stage. And I was like, oh my God, we've got this far. That's amazing. That's enough for me. I couldn't believe I'd actually get to this point. So I was pinching myself a bit today going, I'm really here. But it also felt like I was where I should be as well.
Right, so. Absolutely. So tell me, why is the garden that you're designing with the ADHD Foundation, did you choose to work with that charity? Is there a particular reason? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, well, when you apply to PGB for the sponsorship, and I was aware that there was only another 2 years potentially in it, and I thought, well, probably going to need funding, and if I'm going to do it, then I should do it now. And at that time, I was looking into a diagnosis for ADHD, and it just felt appropriate. So I contacted, because I'd started to really hyper focus on ADHD podcasts, and one of the podcasts that I was listening to at the time was Kate Morusev's podcast, Women's Wellbeing, ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. And so I contacted her, and she very sweetly came back to me, and I said, I'm looking to contact the leading, the UK's leading charity for ADHD. Who do you recommend? And she came in a few of them, and the top of the list was ADHD Foundation, and I just gave them a call, and I ended up speaking to the deputy CEO, and she went, oh yeah, we'd love to do that. That's a great idea. And she said, let me talk to my CEO and I'll come back to you. And I was like, I can't believe this. Everything is sort of going in the right direction at the moment. And it was just about around the time that I had also seen this amazing tree, which is my feature tree in my garden at Form Plants. And it actually, Sam was taking me around the nursery, and I just said, what is that? And, I can see it's a hornbeam, but what about the stem shape? And I just thought it's stood out to me and spoke to me, and I was like, it would have to be in my garden if I did a garden, because it's just so unusual and so majestic. But you just, coming across plants like that feels like a real opportunity to do something wonderful. But it's not, if you gave 100 people pen and paper and asked them to draw a tree, you'd imagine that they would, I imagine that most of them would draw a straight stem and branches coming off either sides, and they wouldn't think that plants may grow sideways or and bend. And after I'd seen that tree, I was like, well, actually, so many of the trees I come across in my walks with my dogs actually are really sculptural, and they don't, very rarely, very few of them actually just goes straight upright. It's the nurseries you find these wonderfully sort of formed trees, because they've been planted in rows and created in some ways and almost trained. But when you're in the woods, it's different.
I completely understand that. And I was just thinking as you were saying that, if someone says to me, draw a tree, I can, if I was to, I'm not very good at drawing at all. So it would look probably like one of the two tree emojis on an iPhone, which is Christmas tree shape, or, just
a balloon.
Just very basic. But I'm outside in the woods all of the time, walking my dog, and there's very, very few trees that are like either of those emojis. Just out there walking around, they're all different. Yeah, they twist and they bend, and sometimes one's been broken, but it's still growing in a different way, a different shape.
Yes. And when they've fallen over and then they push up their shoots. Yes. Yeah.
They're still going. It's so representative, I think. I got
a camera full of photos now. Every time I come across one I really like, I'm like, oh, quickly, just wait there. I'm going to go back and take a photo.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about the garden design itself and how that design links to ADHD. I kind of can see where this is going to go now for sure after we've just said that about the trees. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about the garden design. I don't want to spoil it for everybody because I obviously want people to come along and see it and, view all of the stuff that there is available online if they can't get to the show. But how have you gone about designing it? And how does that link to ADHD in general?
Well, I think, one of the sort of main thoughts behind the charity is thinking differently about thinking differently. So trying to get people to understand what it is like to think differently and what benefits that might bring to you in an educational setting or in an organization or in the NHS. That thinking differently is beneficial, because if we were all the same, we all thought the same way, then we would have a very different society. And we need those people who think differently. And it's not, it's not a deficit, which is, attention deficit. We all say that it's being badly labelled. It's not hyperactive necessarily, especially for, it's not noticeable in women. That's why it's only really coming out in girls and women that that they're getting diagnosed now more because it's not so obvious. The hyperactivity goes on in the brain. It's like popcorn, the ideas, and just slowing all that down and, being able to focus on one idea rather than going ding, 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 ding. However, so really it's just a difference. And it's important for me to get that message across to the public at Chelsea and help get the charity's message across about that. And so I just wanted to show in my design how plants, the rich diversity of plants that we have, don't always expect them to do, when you plant something, you don't necessarily expect them to behave the way it looks on the pack or it looks on the pot. So, we just about keeping an open mind about what benefits, because just because it doesn't do what you expect it to do, does that mean it's any less good, or is that actually adding value and making it more remarkable? And the other sort of message that I've gone for is that 1 in 5 people, I think this is sort of information that I've got from the charity, 1 in 5 people have a neurodiverse condition. So that's a sort of generalization, but they talk about the 1 in 5 or the hidden 20. And I've used that theme as well in the design with, for example, I have 5 hydrangeas, 4 of them are climbing, and 1 of them stands upright, doing its own thing in its own unique way. And for me, that hydrangea adds so much value to my design.
I absolutely love how you are articulating this, as in, if we all thought exactly the same. Oh, I just dropped my phone on the floor. If we all thought exactly the same, we would be robots. But we don't like it if somebody thinks different, or we're not able to deal with it if somebody thinks different. But it's like plants. If we only grow one crop of plants, like monoculture, that's terrible for biodiversity. So having a whole range of plants that grow in different ways and, are good for different pollinators and all those things, that's how you create a good environment. So to me, that's no different to humans. The more diversity, the better for us in general, for us as humans and for the world. So I love...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing that I found was that they're saying neurodiversity is to the human race what biodiversity is to the environment.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's got to be the quote of this episode for sure. I love that so much.
I love that too. Okay, yes.
So you've already mentioned some plants, and you've obviously mentioned your showcase tree that you loved and your hydrangeas, but can you tell us a little bit more about the planting? Any favourite plants that you've used in the garden? What should visitors expect from coming to see the garden?
A diversity of plants, I hope. So that work well together visually, and obviously what I want to create is for the visitor a really wonderful experience, but for the ADHD visitor, a calming garden to quieten mind. But the other thing with being ADHD is you don't want total quiet. You want stimuli. You want things to be interested in, but to be able to have the pressures of outdoor world lifted off your shoulders and given that chance to just have a moment and focus. And just research says that 15 minutes in the outside world, in nature, lowers cortisol levels, which is stress levels, and increases serotonin and dopamine. And it's dopamine that the ADHD, we call them ADHDers, really are looking for. And that's quite often where the sort of downfall comes. It's the sort of addiction and reliance on, potentially drugs and alcohol. And so if you're going out in nature and you're getting your dopamine, I mean, I remember 1st of March, I think the sun came out, and this spring, we've had the most incredible spring so far. Quite cold at times, but as soon as the sun came out, I felt like a different person, and it was so extreme for me, that feeling. And I'm now aware, because I have ADHD, I'm now aware that actually I'm hypersensitive about these things, really hypersensitive about my environment. So what's important to me is that I create a garden that really makes people feel good.
I absolutely love it. And it just sounds so completely wonderful and immersive. And I love the idea that you can go into a garden and feel calm, but still allow your senses to be active and for you to be interested, but almost feel safe, because it's that outside distraction and the pressure of, society that is
social media.
Social media, all of that stuff. So to feel safe in a natural environment, and like you were saying, is obviously so good for you, but for you to create that within your garden's design sounds really amazing.
So in order to sort of show diversity, I've really tried to pick a range of everything. And I have quite a lot of varieties of plants. I mean, that was worrying me a little bit, because in a normal garden setting, you probably wouldn't do that, especially in the size of garden that I'm working in, and a 48 square meter garden. But I wanted really, as many variety, say leaf shapes, colors, heights of plants, and anything that might do something a little bit different. So things that maybe bend. I've grown, or my children have actually, some Allium siculum, previously known as Nectaroscordum, and quite a lot of them are sort of snaking down. I want them in there because
I love them
doing something different. And so those won't be excluded. It's part of the brief, really, that we want to see plants that, just because they're doing it differently, they're not doing it any less beautifully. It's almost more interesting sometimes.
Yeah, I quite agree. If I see a plant or a tree that habit is different to what you would expect, it will immediately capture my attention. And I think, wow, that's really cool. Isn't it amazing that plant can do that, or it's doing that, and it still looks really beautiful? That's literally hitting the nail on the head with neurodiversity. And I love that. So I think this garden is definitely timely. So I think this is a great time for you to, be really working with the ADHD and showing people how important it is that, neurodiversity is understood better. And better accepted, and actually better supported as well.
Yes, I really would love to feel that it's changing more in schools, because I think growing up I was made to feel like must try harder, just not good enough. And that's not a good thing to grow up with. And then you sort of grow up with this sense of I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And you have, that's the wonderful thing about a diagnosis at my age. I can suddenly go, of course I am. I'm good enough, and regain the confidence that I've potentially lost along the way. But I did just want to mention about my umbellifers, because that's a key plant and a key plant family in my garden, because the charity's logo is an umbrella, which is a symbol for neurodiverse inclusivity. So we have we have 5 wonderful umbrellas as a sculpture in the garden, which is being created by an internationally renowned sculptor called David Begbie, and he's been an absolute dream to work with. I've loved every minute of that process with him. And they are steel mesh, so very sort of ephemeral. And so I've carried that theme through the garden with umbellifers and umbel-shaped flowers. So they are key.
Oh, that's a really great way to show that umbrella symbol. I love that. And also umbellifers I just think they're so whimsical and so pretty, but there are so many different umbellifers and they are very slightly different, all of them. So that's
all of them. Yes. Really, so I have a lot. I'm really excited about, well, gosh, this weather is really quite testing at the moment because it's so hot. And right at the last moment, we were realizing that there were things that were going over and things that won't make the garden. And it's really heartbreaking because you've been growing these plants since for 9 months or so. You get to this point and go, well, that's not coming with us.
It sounds so stressful, Katie. I don't think I could ever do a show garden. Honestly, I would be so stressed about things like that.
But a great friend came to help me today, and thank God for her. She goes, Katie, if you looked at the size of your garden, have you seen how many plants you've got? And I'm like, I know, but we need to. I need to make sure that they're all going to get in somehow. And anyway, it's just you do get overexcited and overorder, but they will all go to good homes.
So where is the garden going to afterwards? Do you have any plans for the garden design as a whole or just for the plants to be moved?
Yeah, the whole garden in its entirety is going up to Liverpool University. So Liverpool University have a nice relationship with the ADHD Foundation because they're also based in Liverpool. And the CEO at the time contacted, I made it very clear we really have to get onto the relocation as one of the first steps because it's so important to create legacies from these gardens and and carry on that message because it's not just for show, it's for forever. And the CEO contacts within the university. And the next thing we knew, we were going up and looking at 3 or 4 different sites to see what would be appealing. And that was lovely because we almost got to choose. And it was down to the CEO, really. He said, well, this would be great. I'd love this. I really liked the location. It was the only reticence was its rooftop location. So it's a little bit tricky in terms of the construction and the added involvement with taking a garden up to first level. But it's outside. It'll be located outside the Yoko Ono Lennon Centre in Liverpool, and the Yoko Ono Lennon Centre was opened 3 years ago by John Lennon's son. It was only built recently, and the exterior landscape is quite devoid of anything. And there was just this rectangular patch of lawn, and we kind of looked at each other and went, yes.
That's the
That'd
place.
be amazing. And that was before we started thinking of, oh God, that means cranes, that means this, that means that means structural engineers, that means a whole different ball game. And
Don't worry about that. That's the kind of thing you think of later. Once you've found the site, that's it. You can make it work.
yeah. So it has been 9 months of negotiations. So breakdown is straight onto an Arctic and up to Liverpool to meet the contractors.
That's incredible. But what an amazing legacy you are creating here, that will live on for hopefully forever, a very long time, if not forever. Can you tell us where on the Chelsea site you are so that listeners who are coming to the show can easily find the garden and take a look?
Oh, thanks, Ellen. Yes, we're outside. We are on the rock bank, which is basically, I think, the original sort of where Chelsea was held originally, way back when they started. So if anybody can identify where the BBC Tower is, to the right of the tower is the Rosé tent, Babylon Store and Rosé, and then myself and Nicola Oakley are the two. We're in a category called the All About Plants category, and Nicola's next to the Rosé tent, and I'm next to her, and there's two other All About Plant gardens as well that are gorgeous, and they're right at the end of Main Avenue. So I do encourage everybody to go to the All About Plants garden, because the remit with that is that we need to be planting 78 to 80% is planted area, and we will be fitting in a lot of beautiful plants. So come and see them.
That sounds like my dream garden, if I'm honest. And also, did you say it's next to the Rosé area as well? So basically,
couldn't get any better. Oh, we're opposite Monty Don's dog's garden, of course.
Hold on a minute. So Rosé dogs and an abundance of plants. This is literally heaven.
This is heaven, isn't it?
This is the place to head to. Anyone going to Chelsea, that's a place that you need to go to first. Katie, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you. I'm so pleased that this garden is, being created. ADHD and neurodiversity is very close to my heart within my family, and also my friends with their children having struggles in school and that kind of thing. So this is so important, and it's on a world stage at Chelsea. So let's hope you get lots of coverage, and it really goes some to help people understanding better what neurodiversity is. So thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, Katie. One last thing. Where can listeners find out more about you and good grounding, such as your website or your social media tags?
Yes, my website is goodgrounding.com, and my social media tag is at goodgrounding for Insta, and I'm Katie Terry on LinkedIn, and on Facebook I'm also Good Grounding. But I have to say I'm less of a LinkedIn, but I've got to up my game on that. But again, it's all like time and.
Absolutely.
But the other thing is the garden is also on the RHS website. If you go to Chelsea Flower Show, and it's on the ADHD Foundation, there's a page on their website. So you can also read about it there.
So loads of information out there, supported by Project Giving Back. Thank you so much, Katie. Everyone, please go and check out the ADHD Foundation. Give Good Grounding a follow on socials as well. And we will let you go off and get some sleep, because you're definitely going to need it for the weeks ahead, Katie.
Ellen, I'm really very grateful. It's been lovely talking to you, and thank you for talking about our ADHD Foundation garden.
Absolutely. Thank you, Katie, and good luck at the show.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. So thank you so much to both of you for being here, Nick and Duncan from Burton Hall Garden Design. I did just giggle because before we started, I thought you were drinking a beer, and it made me laugh because I thought this is very early on in the Chelsea Show Garden landscaping stage. But you've proven that it's non-alcoholic, so all is well.
It is. I've also been here for over a week, so maybe I deserve an alcoholic beer.
You definitely will deserve one very soon, that's for sure. So we'd basically love to know a little bit about your background. Tell us, have you each of you, have you always liked plants, and how did you get into garden design?
Do you want to go first? Or shall I go first?
Yeah, I can go first. Yeah, so I guess we both have a fairly similar background. Yeah, we've both been head gardeners, so we both share a love for naturalistic planting, and that's kind of how we got to know each other, really. So I was working in the Highlands, and Nick was doing a project up there, and we just sort of got to know each other, started working together a bit more. And
then I think on my website it says, which I've forgotten about, that I bought a spider plant from a school fete age 6, and that started my love of plants. And I think I had multiple generations of that one spider plant, which lasted for years and years and years. And then always wanted to do something with the earth, wanted to be a farmer for a while, and then realised that maybe wasn't practical for me, and then chose horticulture. And then, like Duncan, went down the sort of gardening route, so I was a head gardener in a number of places, and then started working in garden design on my own about full-time, probably about 15 years ago. And as Duncan said, we met on a project together in the Highlands.
I just picturing working in the Highlands of Scotland. It must be absolutely beautiful.
Well, it can be. It can be absolutely.
It was the spot that I was living up there working on a big project, and Nick was working on a project on the very north coast up in Tongue, which was owned by the same people that I worked for. So I helped out with some planting logistics and stuff, because it's really difficult to get things to the north of Scotland. And it's very beautiful up there.
But you're right, it is beautiful, but equally it can really throw, midges for a start. And then in the winter it can be pretty brutal. But
it's gorgeous.
It is beautiful. Yeah, no doubt about it.
So tell us a little bit about Burton Hall Garden Design then, the business and the kind of gardens that you do design. Do you have a particular style that you love?
Well, so after we met in 2019, Duncan, then you moved, didn't you, down to Dumfries and Galloway, and Duncan started doing. Sorry, I'm speaking for Duncan.
No, I speak for it.
Duncan started doing a very similar thing to me, but I realised very quickly that he had skills I don't have. I.e., he's a wizard with computer design, so we started collaborating on some of my projects, and then just more and more. And then when this Chelsea thing happened, we thought, why don't we join forces? So that's really the genesis for all of this.
Yeah, and it's been well, for me anyway, it's been really lovely. It's been a lovely journey. And
although I've been slightly grumpy this week.
But it's nice.
I think it's time you switch the beer to an alcoholic beer.
It's me age, I think.
But it's a really nice thing to find someone that shares the same kind of interests and the same style and the same ethos, and our design kind of style right through our process. We never really argue about it. It just comes very natural.
It really does.
And that's I think that's really it's really lucky.
Yeah, and we're getting some really nice projects now. We're doing a lot of work, working closely with various architects in and around Scotland, and we've got projects back up in Tongue, in the Highlands, down in the Borders, Edinburgh, over on the west, down in Dumfries and Galloway. So we've got projects all over Scotland, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm super pleased that Chelsea has some a touch of Scotland at the show, because it's something that I always think there's so much going on in Scotland when it comes to horticulture, and I feel a little bit like it gets left out.
But you're not. Yeah, you're not wrong. I think, Ellen, there.
So this is great news that you're at Chelsea.
Well, there's 3 gardens at Chelsea that will be relocated in Scotland this year, which is wonderful news. So
That's very cool. So why have you chosen to design for Chelsea now? Like what got you started on, like where did it start? Did you just sit down one day over a beer and say, hey, let's just design a garden for Chelsea? Like, where did this begin?
Well, Nick has planted several Chelsea gardens in the past, working with other designers. And it was, 2 years ago after Nick returned, and we were having a conversation about just how was it planting at Chelsea this year? Would you ever do one? which Nick's response was no. And then he asked me, and I thought, well, if you did it, I would do it. It was kind of like two little children in the play park saying, well, you do it and I'll do it. And then we sort of thought, well, okay, if we did do this, how would this work? And we both just agreed that we'd only do it if we had a charitable cause that we really believed in, something that we could really get behind. And so that kind of started the process.
Yeah, so actually you found the email, didn't you, recently for Down Syndrome Scotland? So we must have had this discussion in May of 23. And then Duncan sent an email to Down Syndrome Scotland, and this came about, I think, after Duncan mentioned his nephew Liam, who has Down syndrome, and I think we had the conversation. Have Duncan's brother and sister-in-law had support from anyone, and they said yes, Down Syndrome Scotland. So Duncan approached his brother and asked, if whether it would be worth approaching them, and then you sent that email in the August of that year. So that's really where it all started. Mm-hmm.
So I've watched the Project Giving Back video on YouTube about the garden. So for listeners, just go to the Project Giving Back website or their YouTube channel, and you'll see that there, and we get a really good idea about kind of behind the scenes with your nephew Liam, who's 8, isn't he? I think he's 8, yeah. And how Down Syndrome Scotland has been so supportive of him and your family and other families as well. So what I'm really interested to kind of understand is you've designed the garden, and the garden design is there to help break the stigma faced by people with Down syndrome. How do you go about that process? And tell us a little bit more about the design. If a visitor was coming along and looking at the garden, how do you think that's going to help break down that stigma?
Well, we were really fortunate because right from the beginning and up until now and continuing, the charity Down Syndrome Scotland have been incredibly engaged in this process. So we asked them if they were to have a garden at Chelsea, what they would like that to express and what they would like that to look like. So they gave us a brief. And looking back at that brief now, it's amazingly sort of consistent with how the whole process has gone. So we haven't really had to adjust things that much. The messaging's really, really clear. So the garden is about celebrating life for people with Down syndrome through some of their characteristics, or we like to call them superpowers. So we have elements of joy and playfulness and fun and mischief, and also elements of affection and sensitivity. And then we have also a really powerful message about prejudice and misconceptions. So that's really
Yeah,
I'd say that's the most important sort of.
Yeah, I think so. And the way we've kind of, because it's quite, how do you express those sort of things in a garden? So I mean, we want to create a beautiful garden, but so we have referenced through the design the numbers 3 and 21, Down syndrome being caused by a third or partial copy of chromosome 21. So, for instance, we have 2 benches made by Lawrence McIntosh that have 21 slats and 3 sets of legs. We have 21 tiles made by the ceramic artist Francis Priest, which are inlaid into our paving. We have 3 water features. We have 3 seating areas. And then for the fun and mischief, we've got a secret water jet. For the empathy and affection, our building, we gave Old School Fabrications the brief of designing a building that felt like you were being embraced, and it's already been nicknamed the Hug. And then for this hard-hitting message that Duncan alluded to, we have a ground level pool with a which intersects the path, which looks like you can't walk any further, but actually just under the surface of the water is a walkway which allows you to walk further. And so, these barriers and misconceptions and can be overcome. And so, if given the chance, let people with Down syndrome fulfill their full potential. So that's probably the most important message. But
so there's quite a lot going on there. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of kind of layers to the whole thing. But we want to be able to, with every element of the garden, to be able to start conversation. So it's not immediately obvious, but when someone asks about an element, it then becomes a really good way to turn it into a conversation about Down syndrome and how we view Down syndrome in our society, how we can change that and sort of challenge some of these prejudice.
Actually, and Ellen, we should say, in fact, we should have said this sooner than now, but none of this would be at all possible without the amazing support of Project Giving Back, who have sponsored our garden and given us not only financial support, but all sorts of other support as well, and made this possible. And that was, again, not a happy accident, but it just so happened when we were thinking about doing this, Project Giving Back announced that they were going to extend their funding for another 2 years, so for 2025 and 2026. So everything kind of seemed to slot into place, didn't it? Mm-hmm. But massive gratitude to them. Without them, this would not be possible.
Absolutely. They are such an incredible organisation, and I truly do believe that they have changed Chelsea.
Yeah, no, you're right. You are absolutely right.
So more designers can, obviously design for Chelsea, but just making it more accessible and opening up this world stage for charitable organisations to get seen and understood better. So I'm with you. I have great gratitude for them as well. Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about the planting on the garden.
Well, we've got two main areas of planting, and again, this links into the brief that Down Syndrome Scotland gave us. So the 2 main areas are a sort of calm, more verdant zone that is about sensitivity and affection that surrounds the building, the Hug, so that it's kind of nestled in this lovely, calm kind of part of the garden. And then the other part of the planting is much more playful, and it's much more colourful. So we want to kind of just express that kind of joy and fun side of Down syndrome. And then the challenge that we're kind of going through in the last couple of days is just sort of marrying those together in a nice way that feels seamless and not too kind of disjointed. So we're just we're working on that.
Yeah, and sort of like I think every year at Chelsea, a few things that you were hoping for haven't made it through, and then a few things have gone over already. But we've got an amazing selection of plants grown by Kelways, and then some fantastic trees which have been grown by Deepdale Trees. It's really. So I think we're probably, but we're almost halfway there, aren't we?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible. The show will soon be here, and will be on show to the public. The weather's been extremely hot and sunny, hasn't it, for this time of year? Has that impacted the build in any way?
Well, it's been pretty warm.
Yeah, it's made elements of it good, like the dry and the warm. They made it quite. The installation of our landscaping was pretty quick and pretty seamless.
The weather's bringing on our trees as well nicely.
Yeah, but it's a little bit tricky with some of the herbaceous plants just getting baked a little bit. We're trying to protect them and shade them and things, but there's a few things that are just going over a little quicker than maybe would have otherwise.
All the dust. The Chelsea cough is rife this year.
Oh, is it really? Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I think nobody, until you experience it, think, what on earth are they talking about? But
I totally get it. I've had the Chelsea cough before. And it's just the most weird, because it's sort of like itchy, tickly, but there's nothing there. How do you cough when there's no reason to cough? It's so weird. Okay, so can you just tell us where on the Chelsea site you are, so visitors know how to very easily find you when they come along?
We are on the western end of Royal Hospital Way. So if you've got the marquee behind you and you're facing the Royal Hospital, we're at the back on the left-hand side.
Okay, great.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. So you have the hospital behind the garden?
Yes, which is a lovely backdrop. Yeah, it's a really nice backdrop.
Absolutely, it is. And where can listeners find out more about you guys and your garden design business and the show garden online?
Well, our website.
Yeah, our website, which is burtonhallgardendesign.co.uk, and our Instagram, which is Burton Hall Garden Design.
Okay. Yep. And anyone that's interested in Down Syndrome Scotland, you can take a look at their website, and also, of course, Project Giving Back as well.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just thinking I will actually put the Project Giving Back link to the film of absolutely lovely Liam and family on the description to this podcast, so that will be easier for listeners.
No, that'd be good. Thank you.
Great. Yeah.
And take a look. And I have to just ask, is Liam going to come and see the garden?
He is. Liam's coming with his brother and his mum and dad. So we're really
excited to see them.
Yeah, we'll welcome them on the garden. That'll be really nice.
You know, you may be getting judged, but the true test is if Liam and family like
absolutely.
This is it.
Yeah. Well, I have to introduce them to the secret tile. Although, yes, that could be interesting.
Sorry, hang on. Did we just completely miss something here? A secret tile?
Oh, well, yes, maybe we shouldn't broadcast this, but there is a tile inlaid. We can't possibly tell you where it is, but there's a tile inlaid in the paving, which is the trigger switch for our water jet.
Which sprays on the path, so if you don't know it's there, someone will get soaked.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the fun and mischievous water jet. I love that. That's really exciting.
So I think I'll show Liam where the tile is and see who he can get.
Yeah.
Yes, let him do the mischievous.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been really lovely to chat with you. I wish you all
our pleasure.
Although I'm sure you don't need it. It will be fabulous. And I hope you really do thoroughly enjoy the show. Did we say also where the garden is going to afterwards, after the show?
No, we haven't, but that's important. Thank you, Ellen. It is going to Palace Country Park, just outside Cumbernauld in North Lanarkshire, and it's going to be partly built and maintained by another charity for adults with additional learning needs called Watch Us Grow, many members of whom are members of Down Syndrome Scotland. So it's got a really meaningful legacy, so it's going to be rebuilt pretty much immediately after the show.
Fantastic. It will grow on. I love that.
It will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
I don't want to keep you too long because I absolutely know that this is an exhausting time, but I wish you all the very best, and thanks for coming onto the podcast.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy the show.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We are so excited to be back at BBC Gardener's World Live this June. British Garden Centres are the headline sponsor for the BBC Gardener's World Live Theatre, where gardening experts such as Monty Don, Adam Frost, and the plant-based podcast's very own Michael Perry will be taken to the stage and talking all things gardening and sharing their top tips. At the show, we will also have a pop-up garden centre where you can shop the latest plants at unbeatable prices and pick up your favourite gardening essentials, plus speak to our horticultural specialists about the plants you love. This is the perfect day out for any gardening lover, so to book your tickets, visit our events page on britishgardencentres.com.
The music for the Plant-Based podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.